Ecological Succession 14.6 Ecological Succession. You have learned in chapter 13 the characteristics of population and community and also their response to environment and how such responses vary from an individual response. Let us examine another aspect of community response to environment over time. An important characteristic of all communities is that composition and structure constantly change in response to the changing environmental conditions. This change is orderly and sequential parallel with the changes in the physical environment. These changes lead finally to a community that is in near equilibrium with the environment, and this is called a climax community. Near equilibrium with the environment. The gradual and fairly predictable change in the species composition of a given area is called ecological succession. What is ecological? The gradual and fairly predictable change in the species composition of a given area is called ecological succession. It is predictable and gradual. During succession, some species colonize an area and their populations become more numerous, whereas populations of other species decline and even disappear. The entire sequence of communities that successively change in a given area are called set. What is that? Not a series. Set. What is that? The entire sequence of communities. What is? The entire sequence of communities that successively change in a given area are called set. And what is next? The individual transitional communities are termed serial stages or serial communities. If there are 10 people and the group that the community successively change is called as seed. All the group of 10 people is called as seed, but single person is called as stage. Yes, he will go on a stage now. That is the stage. He is performing the stage. Yes, that is serial stages. The individual transitional communities are serial stages or serial communities. In the successive serial stages, there is change in the diversity of species of organisms, increase in the number of species and organisms, as well as an increase in the total biomass. The present day communities in the world have come to be because of succession that has occurred over millions of years since life started on Earth. Actually, succession and evolution would have been parallel process at that time. Succession and evolution would have been parallel processes at that time. Yes, of course, something will be evolved, they will succeed, evolve succession, evolve succession. Succession is hence a process that starts where no living organisms are there. These could be areas where no living organisms ever existed, say bare rock, or in areas that somehow lost all the living organisms that existed there. The former is called primary succession, while the other one is termed as secondary succession. Examples of area where primary succession occurs are newly cooled lava, bare rock, newly created pond or reservoir. This is so important. I think so. We should cut this and only newly cooled lava. Okay, and primary succession occurs. The establishment of a new biotic community is generally slow. Before a biotic community of diverse organisms can become established, there must be soil. Depending mostly on the climate, it takes natural processes several hundred to several thousand years to produce fertile soil on bare rock. Secondary succession begins in areas where natural biotic communities have been destroyed, such as an abandoned farmlands, burned or cut forests, lands that have been flooded. Since some soil or sediment is present, succession is faster than primary succession. Description of ecological succession usually focuses on changes in vegetation. However, these vegetation changes in turn affect food and shelter for various types of animals. Thus, as succession proceeds, the numbers and types of animals and decomposers also change. As succession proceeds, number of and types of animals and decomposers also change. At any time during primary or secondary succession, natural or human-induced disturbances, fire, deforestation, etc. can convert a particular serial stage of succession to an earlier stage. Human-induced disturbances can convert a serial stage of succession to an earlier stage. Also, such disturbances create new conditions that encourage some species and discourage or eliminate other species. Now comes 14.6.1 Succession of plants. This is so important topic. based on the nature of the habitat, whether it is water or it is on very dark area. Succession of plants is called hierarch or xerarch, respectively. Hierarch succession takes place in wetter areas, and the successional series progress from hierarch to the Mesic conditions, as against this xerarchic. Xerarchic succession takes place in dry areas, and the series progress from xeric to Mesic conditions. All of the things into the Mesic condition, that is medium water. Hence, both hydric and xeric successions lead to medium water condition Mesic, neither too dry nor too wet. The species that invade a bare area are called pionosphere. Species that invade a bare area. Which area? Bare area. Banjar zameen. In primary succession on rocks, these are usually lichens, which are able to secrete acids to dissolve rock. First one are lichens. Primary succession on rocks, these are usually lichens, which are able to secrete acids to dissolve rock. What acids? Helping in weathering and soil formation. These later pave way to some very small plants like bryophytes. Then comes bryophytes, which are able to take hold in the small amount of soil. They are with time succeeded by bigger plants, and after several more stages, ultimately a stable climax forest community is formed. The climax community remains stable as long as the environment remains unchanged. With time, the xerophytic habitat gets converted into a mesophytic one. In primary succession in water, the pioneers are the small phytoplanktons. In primary succession in water, the pioneers are the small phytoplanktons. They are replaced with time by free-floating angiosperms, then by rooted hydrophytes, sedges, grasses, and finally the trees. Who are the pioneers? Pioneers are the small phytoplanktons in the water. With time, the water body is converted into land. In secondary succession, the species that invade depend on the condition of the soil, availability of water, the environment, as also the seeds or other propagals present. Since soil is already there, the rate of succession is much faster, and hence climax is also reached more quickly. What is important to understand is that succession, particularly primary succession, is a very slow process, taking maybe thousands of years for the climax to be reached. Another important fact is to understand that all succession, whether it is a process to a similar climax community, similar climax, the Mesic. And now comes this part from the sponsors, and so important: diagrammatic representation of primary succession. First of all, that is paired what? A point. That is a newly created pond. Phytoplankton, they are innumerable but are not visible. Then comes submerged plant stage. नीचे से शुरुआत होगी ना किसी भी चीज की. Submerged plant stage. Then comes submerged free floating plant stage. ऊपर भी आएंगे थोड़े से. Then comes reed swamp stage. ऊपर आ गए. अभी ऊपर वाले नीचे जाएंगे, ये थोड़े से बढ़ेंगे. फिर मार्श मिडो स्टेज, पानी कम होगा थोड़ा, और फिर उसमें ये जंगल वंगल आएंगे. फिर कम स्क्रब स्टेज, थोड़ा सा पानी बचेगा. फिर बाद में फॉरेस्ट. Now and next we will be seeing nutrient cycling, so important part of the chapter, especially phosphorus cycling. First, okay, fine. In next we will cover.